Hello, I'm Hazel from Hazel A Patterns and welcome to my latest pattern. Now, anybody who has sewn my patterns before will be looking at this thinking, this isn't the latest pattern, this is actually quite an old one, although it is one of my best sellers. This is the wide mouth zipper pouch. That's the pattern. You can see it's quite a large pouch and it opens completely wide, so it's really easy to get to the contents. Now, for this month's pattern, I have actually done 3 new sizes of this pouch. So this is the original. I'm now going to show you the wide mouth pouch family. There's the pattern, and we have this one, which is size 1. This one's makeup bag size and it has the pocket on it like the original. We have this one, which is pencil case size. And then we have this gorgeous little baby, which is coin purse, lipsticks carrying in your handbag, that sort of thing. So I will show you there just so you can get the full idea of sizing. That's the very smallest and that's the very largest. Now, what I've done, you're thinking, oh, she just stuck it in a photocopier and reduced it by a certain percentage. I didn't. These patterns are completely redrafted. The lining is slightly different because this is a much smaller item, but so the instructions are slightly different, and this new pattern has completely pattern pieces. So there are 20 pattern pieces in total. There's a cutting chart that comes with the pattern pieces which explains which ones you need for which size. So without further ado, let's get sewing. So before we begin to do anything at all, you need to decide which size you're going to make. Obviously you can make all 3 sizes, but you've got size 1 is the makeup bag size 2 is the pencil case size, and size 3 is the little coin purse. So the last 2 pages of the pattern pieces, you have actually got your cutting chart list. So before you cut out or do anything else, you can cut out the correct sizes for the pieces that the size that you're making. I'm going to be making size 1 for you today, so there are 12 pieces there and the 2 zips to cut out. So before we get to sewing, I have fused the interfacing to all of the fabric pieces that required it and fused the fleece on top of that. And then you can see from my pattern pieces, like many of them, there are a lot of different markings to help you when you're sewing. So what I always do with mine, I use an awl to poke through the holes, the dots. I use this pattern notcher to cut out the notches. And then my current favourite fabric marker, I like to use my Air-erasable marker to transfer the markings. So I've transferred them onto the reverse of these fabrics. It actually goes through. Now before you use any marker, you need to check that it's actually going to come off your fabric, because what you don't want to do is find you have ruined your final piece. So let's just transfer these markings here. Now you can see there are dots at the top here, which are to do with the zip. There are dots at the side, which actually help you to stitch the pouch together. And there's a notch at the bottom and a notch at the top as well. Again, all to help you to get everything lined up beautifully when you're sewing. So I'm just going to transfer all the markings on. I've done all the others, as you can see. One note about the Air-erasable marker if you are planning to sew over the course of several days, you might find that you have to go back in and put the markings back on, because it does work. It does what it says on the tin. It erases itself. So there we go. With any luck, the dots should just be at the edges of where you've put the fleece on as well. There we go. And now we're ready to get sewing. So we're going to begin with step 1. You only need to follow this step if you are making size 1, which is the slightly bigger of the 3. I've decided in the end the other 2 are so tiny that there's no point in putting a front pocket in. So what we're going to do then, we've got our pieces, that's the upper front, the lower front. We're going to start with the lower front. Now I'm using continuous zipping. When I do that, because there's 2 sections, I like to leave everything attached, because that way you don't have to worry about pulling the zipper pull out of your way. So that's the, you can see the dots are at the bottom there. That's the top of the lower front. I'm going to put the zipping face down and with the excess zip to the left. And then, now this fabric's not directional, but if you had a directional pocket bag fabric, you would want to make sure that it was facing the right way. So the easiest way to work this out is fold it up as if it was actually finished and in position. We know we're going to now have to stitch this side, and we want it to be upside down. So flip it over, that's it, and position it. Now you can clip this, or you can just stitch it without clipping it. I have previous videos where I have stitched straight front pockets, so you can always look at one of those if you want to. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and stitch this, and then I will show you how we're going to top stitch it. So there we have it. You can see I've stitched through all 3 layers. And now to do the top stitching, we only want to top stitch through 2 of the 3 layers. So I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to flip back just the front there. So you can see the lining is out of the way, and when I take it over to top stitch in a minute, it's going to stitch through that seam allowance and the outer. Just go and do that, and then we'll prep for the next stage part of the zip. So there we have it, top stitching done there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the zip and we're going to lift it up so that everything is lined up at the top here. Now you can see my lining has slightly stretched. It doesn't have any interfacing in it because we don't want the bulk of that. So what I'll do is we will trim it off before we get to the next stage, but we don't need to do that yet. So there we go. So that's the first 2 layers. Now we need to make sure we are using the correct part of this. So the notch is at the top because that's going to be the center top. So now we can just line that up face down, and I'll go and take that over and stitch it and top stitch it. So 2 little things now left to do to finish this front. First thing, most important of all, is pull your zipper so it's within the space here, and then we're going to trim off the excess on this side. You can do it with a rotary cutter if you need to. And then we are going to trim off the zip on this side. There we go. Oh, and a bit of the lining on that side as well. And then what I'm going to do is take it over to the machine and stitch down both sides. So stitch here down and here down, and that's going to hold everything together. So now we're going to attach the sides. Now I've just noticed I've done something a little bit silly here. It doesn't actually really matter, but normally the zips pull to the left. I've managed to put mine on the other way around, so it's going to pull to the right. Nobody's going to really mind, I don't think. Eek. But anyway, do as I say, not as I do. So what we're going to do now, you can see the first thing I've done is I have joined the front and the back. So if you're making the smaller sizes, you won't have to worry about this pocket or putting the zips on the wrong way around. You just need to stitch the bottom together and press it open. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use 2 pins, and this is the point at which our dots are going to be important. So I'm going to stick the first pin through there, stick the second pin through the top dot. So these are the 2 dots we're using. These are the ones, as I said earlier, are for the zip. So what I'm going to do is lift up, and you can see my dot here. Oops. So I'm going to push the pin through, matching that dot there. The other pin then is at the top. Again, I'm going to push the pin through, matching that top dot. Oops. And you can see it should line up nicely. I'm going to put a couple of clips in, and then I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine, because this next stage we're going to actually stitch all in one go. So here we go. Over at the machine, you can see the pins through both dots there, and I've just put the couple of clips in. Now, obviously, we don't want to have these pins in the way, but I'm going to keep the second one in just for now until we get nearer to that point, and then we'll use it to join up the next dots. So I'm going to try and use the awl to move things around so that I don't get my hands in the way of you. So you only need to stitch from the dots. Anything above that is going to go in the seam allowance and probably going to get trimmed anyway. So just check first that everything is lined up, which it is. And there we go. So I'm going to keep that in there because this is cut on the diagonal, which makes it more than a little bit stretchy. And now we're coming up to it. I'm going to stitch up to the dot, and then I'm going to stop a tiny bit more with my needle down in the dot. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to lift this up and swing it round to match this dot, the second dot, to this dot here on the underside of the other one. So there we go. Takes a couple of goes sometimes to get the pin through. There we go. And then what you should see is that notch there should match with the seam at the bottom. So I'm going to hold that in place and stitch down to the next dot. That's it. Just check. Maybe a tiny bit more. That's it. And this is the slightly harder one because now you've got 2 lots of movement that you're trying to pull round, and it does want to curve, but we're going to do the same thing again. Final dot, pop that in. Put a couple of clips in if you want to, just to hold it so that it doesn't shift around, but you can see where the diagonal, where the bias is wanting to pull things around. There we go. That's it. And that's it. So just to bring it up, you can see we've stitched down one side, across the bottom and up the other side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut a little, in fact I'll do that while I'm still at the machine, because you'll need little scissors to do it. So I'm actually going to cut down on the reverse first of all, just to free it up, and then I'm going to clip across, and that will just make it a nicer corner when you turn it through. So and that's it. I'm going to stitch the other side and then we'll go back over to the table and I'll show you how it looks. So here we have it, our finished little piece. So let me bring this up so you can see we've clipped the corners like that on all four sides. And then what I'm going to suggest we do is just pop it through just to see that it looks all right. But we'll then back the other way because that's the easiest way to do the zip. So there we go. That's going to be very, very cute indeed. And the last thing we can do, and you can do it with either the iron or with your fingers if it's super hot and you don't want to turn the iron on, is just press this allowance so that the panel is sitting flat and the allowance is pointing towards the sides. There we go. So now we're ready to do the lining. So these are our lining pieces, and you can see on the reverse I've got all the marks for the top, but I've also marked on and drawn on the lines for the darts. So the easiest way to get these ready for sewing is by feeding a long pin through one side and out the other, fold it in half and then finger crease it, and do that with all four. And then when you're stitching a dart, you always stitch from the outside to the point, and then you can tie off the ends. I'll go and do those. So we've stitched the darts, and now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to press. Again, I'm going to finger press and make sure that the allowance of the dart is pointing inwards to the centre. As you can see at the moment, it looks like I've got a horrible felt tip line on my darts, but it will either fade or with this particular one you can spritz it with some water and then it'll disappear. There we go. So what we need to do now is put these sections together and matching the point of the dart so that when it's actually stitched, it should look as though it is one seam rather than darts. I'm going to use that to hold the seam allowances. When you go to stitch this on the machine, you need to pivot when you get to the dart, and what you might find is your seam allowances will try and splay outwards, so you need to make sure it's all lined up nicely before you carry on sewing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch down just from the side here down to the dart, pivot and stitch along a little bit, and I'm going to leave a turning gap. So the easiest way to do that is complete that seam, flip the thing over and stitch down from the other side to the dart, pivot and across. There we go. So stitch together, and I've got a gap in the middle. Let's have a look. Yeah, pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to finger press this. I'm actually going to press it with the iron. And now I don't have one of these miniature irons, and this is obviously quite difficult to press. So I'm going to show you a little thing that I use to press mine. And it's this. It's a tailor's clapper. I've got two actually. This one is a Millwood one. The other one that I have was a handmade one from eBay, which is really nice. So obviously the ends are very easy to press. Oops. If I can get my fingers into it. So obviously you can press it flat against your pressing mat, but the second you start to get into those curves, it's really hard to find a way to press. So what you can do with this, you can see it's got this sort of nice narrow little edge, and if you pull that over the edge, you can use either end with this. Obviously you just need to be careful with the iron that you don't press your fingers, but I'm going to press that one. And press that one. And then what I'm going to do, flip that out. I'm just going to pull slightly with my fingers, which will curve that, and it will start to go into its seam. There we go. So you've now got a nice neat edge on your turning gap, which would make it easier to close later. Now we're going to make our pull tab. Unfortunately, it's still with the iron, so I hope it's not as hot where you are as it is here. But this is really straightforward. Press it in half, open it out. Put the end to the middle. The edges, sorry, to the middle, and on the other side. Then close it back up again. And what I'm going to do now, you can see there, is I'm just going to edge stitch down one side and up the other, and then we'll fold it in half. And the left hand side, I'm going to centre that over the notch at the back and just stitch it in place to hold it in. So now we're going to, first of all, prepare our zip for stitching in. So making sure I've got it the correct way around this time, that is the top of the zip. This is the zip guide, zip marking guide, and you can see I've actually kept these 3 pieces together and just attached the extra ends so that we've got it to the right length. Now the zip is going to be longer than this because this last section doesn't need any marks. So what we need to do is place the zip face down and then make sure the marks are transferred to both sides. Obviously ignore the grey line there, that's just where the pattern pieces had to be joined. And last one. These will all make sense when you go to put the zip on. So the first thing we need to do is prepare the top end, and we're going to do that with our pins. I'm going to put a pin in where the mark is, and then we're going to swing it round so that this piece of zip here goes underneath to create a nice right angle. You still need to be able to see your mark so that it will disappear. Now what I'm going to do to make it easier, you don't have to do this, but I'm actually going to use a little bit of glue stick, which you put to the side of the mark, and do the same on the underside. And I'm going to do that whole thing again. Obviously the glue dries clear, otherwise I wouldn't be using blue glue. And then I'm going to put the pin in to hold that. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So a little bit of glue stick on both sides. Put the pin in where the mark is, and then you know that's got to swing underneath. Then hopefully the pin will hold it while the glue is setting, but you can press it a couple of times as well. So that's the top end. Now we need to make our fiddly zipper tab. So there we have it, our piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to press in a 1/4 inch hem on each side. Now I like little tiny zipper tabs. There are obviously tutorials online for making a fatter zipper tab if you prefer one, and in fact in the video for the original wide mouth zipper pouch, Vicky actually does a fat zipper tab. So if you want to see how to do that, then I suggest you have a look below and the link will be there for that video. So I'm now folded it in half and pressed, folding each end in. And then last but not least, fold it back in together. So you can see it's a tiny little thing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to fold in the ends of the zipper so that the zipper end itself is about 1/2 inch. So you can use pins or clips to hold it, or you can just hold it with your fingers. And then what I'm going to do from the underside, so if it has a right way or a wrong way to your tab, remember it's actually going to fold up around the zip. I'm going to open this out, and then I'm not stitching on the line, I'm actually going to stitch at 1/4 inch down so that the stitching is completely hidden. But I'm going to stitch the tab to the underside of the zipper, and I'm going to use my hump jumper. So there we have it, stitched on the other side. So when you turn it over, you can see the zip is centered there. And what we're going to do is I'm going to fold it up along the pressed line that we did earlier. And then I'm going to pull on any little threads so that they don't stick out. I'm going to fold it back in at the 1/4 inch line that we did before. I'm actually going to use these clips to help because this is quite fiddly. Use a bit of glue stick if you feel the need. In fact, I'm going to do that on these ends because I'm actually going to slightly angle them inwards to make sure they're not going to poke out. And then fold it over and over again. Make sure you haven't got any little bits poking out that shouldn't be there. And then I'm going to take that over to the machine and stitch around in a square. There we have it, little tiny square zipper tab. And now what we're going to do is open out our zip all the way to the tab. And so we're going to take our outer and we're going to start matching up dots with the marks on the zipper tape. So the first one of all, get it the right way around first of all. So the zipper needs to be upside down, and we're going to start with the dots just to the side of the pull tab. So I'm going to use pins because I am very good at pulling things out when I don't want to. So that's the first one there. The second will match. So you slide that down to where the dot is, just there. Now this is going to look like this doesn't fit, but as we stitch it in place, you will see that it does. Alternatively, you can stitch between this line and the next line, then go back and stitch the other two sides, but I will show you in a minute how to stitch it all in one go. So, but just remember, we're not actually matching the edges, we are matching the seam lines. So that's going to be the next one. Again, match the dot. Put a pin in. I will put some clips in as well. And then this one's slightly more complicated because this line here matches the dot here. But we've got one more dot, which is this one here. And we need to pop a pin through that and then curve your zipping down so that it goes underneath that pin. You can use that pin to hold it out of the way. So when we stitch this, we're actually going to stay at 1/4 inch, but we'll stitch through the zip and then we'll gradually end up stitching just on the bag itself. So here we go. Let's do the other side. Okay, I'm going to put a couple more clips in, and then I will take you over to the machine and show you how to stitch this all in one go, all the way around from one side to the other. Now, you don't have to be eagle-eyed to spot that I am actually sewing a different bag at this point. That is because I'm having camera issues today, and yesterday when I was filming, unfortunately the camera slid down and everything went very blurred, so not very good. So what I've done today is I have remade, or I've made another version. I've made size 2, which is the pencil case size. The zip is put in exactly the same way. So I've got up to the same stage, marks on, everything's attached as it should be for the video that you would have been seeing had it been clear. So what I need to try and do is keep my hands back from the front of the machine, because otherwise it will blur it, but I will do what I can. So where I'm starting is on the pull tab itself, because we're going to stitch this round in one great big circle. It will be fine. So take the pins out, because obviously I do not want to stitch on the pins, and I'm using the 1/4 inch mark on my plate to make sure everything's in the right place. Had to just cut that bit there. My machine probably needs a service. It keeps making a noise, which it doesn't normally do. So there we go. It's just telling me it's done too much sewing and it wants to be serviced. So what I'm going to do first of all, I've taken out the clips that I put in up here, and I'm actually going to pull this up so you can see where our mark is. It needs to be level with the front panel. So we're going to stitch up to it, and then we're going to swing everything round. So essentially we're stitching up to the dots. So here we go. So what I need to do now is pull everything straight, pull this straight, and I'm going to just nudge the camera there. I'm basically going to make sure that I'm pulling the back of the tape of the zip back as much as I can so I don't stitch over it, and lining everything back up. I'm going to try this. Sometimes you'd need to put a hump jumper in this, but it might go first time. If it doesn't, we'll get the hump jumper. Oh yeah, look at that. It knows it's being a bit naughty with the noise, and it's trying to be good now. So this is quite straightforward. Nice straight stitching down to the next mark. The only difference with sewing this smaller version is it's much more fiddly. So it's important that we don't take out any of these pins, because the pins at the end are the ones that give us this nice curve downwards. But I'm going to keep going until I get to that mark there. So I'm going to leave the pin in right until the last minute, and then hopefully I can hold it with my finger and with the awl. Right, that's it. Yep, that is perfect. So I will now swing it round. Same again, you know that the tape's going to want to fold over. So I'm going to try and pull it out of the way with the awl. And this is trying to creep down. Yep, let's push that out of the way. So these awls, if you have anything like this that you can use, there's a another tool called the purple fang, which is also very good. So again, I'm going to take that out. That's the pin where the first dot on the side is. Stitch up a little, and then I'm going to make sure that this, again, no creases, no lines. It's quite hard to see because there's a lot of shadow under here as well. And then we're going to carry on stitching at the 1/4 inch because we know that the zip needs to clear the seam at the next dot. So again, take that out. Oops. Same thing again, only we're now going in the opposite direction. Let's get my awl to hold it so you don't see my fingers too much. And we're back onto where it should be. Now, I'm going to have to do the same thing again here that I did on the other side. Excuse my voice. I'm going to take out the clips so that I can pull everything nice and level. So we know that's going up to the dot. Then lift it up and swing it round. Same old thing again, you want to stop that zipper tape from folding over too much. What we're going to do afterwards is we're actually going to go back and cut some little notches into the zipper tape at that point, but I'm not going to do it now. Okay, and we are ready to stitch the long seam again. Finally round to the last bit, back to the beginning. Pull that zipper tape back. Oops, don't know what I just poked there, but never mind. Just check that that's all level, which it is. And reverse back again. And we are done. So let's just check that everything is working and everything is as it should be. So I'm going to turn the bag through. We're going to come back and cut off points and things later to make it fit better. So it looks like everything is nice and even. I'll have to fiddle with getting that zipper tape out. I'm going to just stop and do that, and then we will come back and I'll show you where to do the cuts. So here we are. So looking from the inside, it looks reasonably even. And what we're going to do to help our zipper tape sit more nicely, please don't do this if you're using a stripy zipper tape. We are going to cut down to the stitching on each of these lines. There is a brilliant small video by Spencer Ogg, and she explains about zipper tapes, which is really handy. There we go. So that should then sit nicely. There we go. Next step is to get the lining. So here we go, the lining we prepared earlier with this nice turning gap, which we're going to use shortly. And you can see we've got some marks on this, and you can probably tell they correspond with marks on the outer. So that dot there should match with the dot on the inside. So I'm going to use the pin to find the dots, but I'm going to clip it in place. Same with the dot on the other side here. There we go. And then that centre notch. The notches on the sides here should correspond with the side seams of the lining. Obviously make sure the zip is tucked down inside. And that's ready to go. You can pull up the inside just to make it fit more easily into the lining. I'm going to put a lot more clips on, then I'm going to go and take it to the machine and sew it, and then we will turn it through. So here we have it, stitched around. I followed the lines of the previous row of stitching. Obviously, if you're using a dark coloured zip and therefore a dark thread, it's much easier, but I checked it, and I've been in and actually done a little bit more stitching where I felt I needed to, because I wanted to make it more even. So what you would normally do then is just check everything first, and then the last little thing I'm going to do before we turn it through is where we have our corners, we're going to snip them off, but don't snip through the zipper tape. I'm going to do the same on the lining. Obviously you've snipped down into the zipper tape, but I don't think it's designed to have great big munches taken out of it with scissors. So this will just make it sit a bit more nicely. one more to do. And we are so close to finishing. Just the top stitching left to do and sorting out the turning gap, and then that's it. So let's do this. Okay. Just to show you it's all done. Fairly even enough for me. I am not 100% perfectionist, although you're welcome to go in and do it again and again until you get it right, if that suits you. So what we need to do now is turn everything inside out and go round and top stitch around the top of the bag, and we're going to start it here, sort of just underneath where the zipper tape is. There we have it, top stitched all the way around through all of the layers, so it will hold the lining away from the zip. And there we go. We have our finished pouch, apart from something hidden inside, and that is our turning gap here. So you can either stitch it closed with a ladder stitch, or you can do it on the machine. And there we go. I decided to finish mine with machine stitching. That'll tuck back inside. You can still see some of my marks because it hasn't faded yet. I've made this, it's a very fast make. But there we go. What I will do is I will spritz them with some water and let them dry in this heat, and then I can do the outro and show you everything that we've completed. So well done, you've finished. Now, this is the pouch that I was making throughout most of the video. And as you can see, after I'd finished all the filming, I realised that I'd had a skill issue with one of the sequences because my camera had slipped down in its mount and all you could see was my fingers. So this is the other size that I decided to make. Just, you can see inside there, this fits, as I said, makeup brushes, pencils. This I have actually got with my makeup inside. And I've actually just been on holiday and I took this lovely one here, which matches my wet and dry wash bag that I made recently, the extra large one. So if you have any questions at all, check in the comments. You can have a look on my webpage for more information and more still photographs of these items. But other than that, like this if you'd like it, subscribe if you want to see more of the same, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Bye for now.